The Invictus generation is defining what it means to serve. It's your privilege to watch in the stands or with your friends and families around the television. Show the world what Game On Down Under really means.
This is Invictus Games Sydney, all of this, all the people, all the kids cheering everyone on. It's amazing.
And what these people all can do, it's bringing out a lot.
You're there to support everyone else, no matter if they're your team or not, if you met them or not. And that's what the Invictus spirit is.
Well, I don't care if I win a medal or not, as long as I finish the race.
I'm proud to be here, and it's a big honor to represent my nation.
Every minute has been just such a life-altering experience.
The Invictus Games for me is respect, camaraderie and mateship, and also to be always learning.
It's a celebration of the phenomenal human spirit.
This is my chance to course correct.
This is something great, something awesome, and this is new sport for me.
Get out of the house and take care of yourself and be the special person that you can be.
You are the Invictus generation, and you are showing us all that anything is possible.
Oh, it's just so incredibly powerful, isn't it? Such wonderful images reminding us of the Invictus Games Sydney 2018. Now, thank you so much to every single person joining us here today. My name is Erin Molan, and I am so excited to be here for the launch of Invictus Australia. My dad was in the Army for over 40 years, and I don't think there is really any profession that is more noble in this country than someone who is willing to give their life and sacrifice their life for their country and for their fellow Australians. So to be able to support them in any capacity once they finish doing that is an honour for the rest of Australia and something that makes me really, really passionate. Now, today we have some very special guests who we will meet very shortly. And listening in, of course, we have wonderful stakeholders from the Games. We've got lots of volunteers, government, competitors, and of course, sponsors. But before we commence today's event, in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. Now, we pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. Now, in Australia, there are over 640,000 veterans plus their families, with another 6,000 transitioning out of defence every year. It's not just the serving member, it's all of the other people in their lives, their immediate families. Everyone is impacted by this. Now, the statistics say that almost 20% are discharged for medical reasons, and that 1 in 2 will experience a mental health disorder in their lifetime. 1 in 2. Now, that is why Invictus is so important, and to shine a spotlight on these really incredible issues. Now, since the Sydney Games, Veteran Sport Australia has continued to shine that light to connect veterans and their families from around the country with sporting opportunities to improve health and wellbeing. And I've always said this, sport is so powerful. It's more than just a game. It is such an incredible thing, particularly in Australia. Now, if you experience, of course, we've got to get this out of the way, any technical difficulties, for starters, it's not our fault. Secondly, make sure you refer to the support section at the bottom of your screens or contact the support team listed. Now, without further ado, the announcement, of course, that we have all been waiting for.
The Duke of Sussex created the Invictus Games 7 years ago, and with it provided support to veterans around the world. We are resilient, tenacious, and unconquered, the Invictus generation. Now it is time to do more to support all veterans through the power of sport and the Invictus movement. There are over 640,000 veterans in Australia, and our families have supported us through our service. The military provides us with unique skills and perspectives on life. Some members are still serving. Some have transitioned and are thriving. Some are wounded, injured and ill as a result of their service. And that's why we're pleased to announce today that the Invictus Games Foundation has selected Australia as the first country to harness the Invictus movement via the launch of Invictus Australia. This will take the Invictus community and spirit to all Australian veterans and families and set a benchmark for health and wellness for the world to follow. We are unconquered together.
The Invictus Games Sydney in 2018 shone a spotlight on the healing power of sport for veterans.
But Invictus is about so much more than sport. It captures hearts, challenges minds, and changes lives.
Since the closing ceremony, we have united veterans, families of veterans, sporting bodies, government, corporates, and the Australian public under the banner of Veteran Sport Australia.
Showcasing sport's impact on recovery, rehabilitation and reintegration.
Encouraging Australians to embrace our veterans every day.
The Invictus movement now finds a permanent home in Australia as we become Invictus Australia.
The Invictus generation is defining what it means to serve.
Invictus Australia will break down barriers and open up new opportunities.
To improve the health and well-being of our military personnel and their families.
Invictus means unconquered.
At Invictus Australia,
We honour the unconquerable spirit of those who have served.
I, you, we,
us.
Oh, it's so courageous and just so inspiring. And as you've heard, we're here today to talk about the launch of Invictus Australia and what that means, not just to the individuals who compete, but the entire defence community and, of course, their families. This is a cause that's really close to my heart and, without any doubt, close to the hearts of every single person that will feature on this video here today. I'm joined in the studio by a number of very, very special guests to reflect on, first of all, the Sydney 2018 Invictus Games. Now, the former Governor-General of Australia, former Chief of Defence and Invictus Australia patron, General Sir Peter Cosgrove. The Chairman of Invictus Australia and Army veteran, James Brown. And joining us remotely, we have the 2018 Invictus Games team co-captain, Nicole Bradley, and the Invictus Australia Veteran Engagement Specialist and 2016 Invictus competitor, Rachel Kerrigan. Thank you all so very much for giving up your time today. It's such an honour to have you all with us. So first off, Nicole, co-captaining an Invictus team, I can only imagine would be a role like no other. How incredible was it for you to be chosen as leader of a team that's, well, filled with so many leaders?
Yeah, you're right, Erin. There are some really big personalities amongst that team. And to be asked to be co-captain was extraordinary. I have so much respect for each of the members of the team, and to be able to represent them on the world stage was a really humbling experience. The team was really special in that you had veterans and still people that were still serving come together. We all acknowledged that we'd all made the same commitment, when we signed the dotted line to join up, and that gave us a real common bond to be there with. But I think my favourite part probably during the whole experience was watching the team come together and be exposed to all these new opportunities and how they could compete in sport. We all had a background in sport in one way or the other because of our service. And so getting the chance to see people try wheelchair rugby, wheelchair basketball, seated throwing, seated volleyball, it was so great because this competitive spirit that we'd all had was kind of being reignited amongst everybody. It was just an extraordinary experience I'll never forget.
Well, you did a wonderful job, Nicole. Well done. Now, Rachel, you've been an Invictus Games competitor, but when Sydney came around, you were more advanced on your rehabilitation journey. So you played a little bit of a different role. Tell us about your reflections and memories of that moment.
Yeah, hi Erin. It was really great. I mean, I was so privileged. I got to experience the Games as a competitor. And then in 2018, I got to experience it from a totally different level. And both opportunities gave me such unique and different experiences and really helped me on my journey. I had a really long battle with mental health and that after my service, and 2016 was a really tough time for me and one of the most unique experiences I've ever had and changed my life. My favourite memory of that Games was actually a Great Britain competitor in a 100-metre sprint race. We were told that, he'd only just received his new legs. He was a double amputee a few weeks earlier, and here he was running in a 100-metre sprint race. We hadn't even finished hearing his story by the time everybody else had finished the race. And every single person went back and ran with him, and the cheers were just unbelievable. And that's a moment I took with me for the rest of my life because it sort of reflected to me that it's not about the challenges you face. It's about, celebrating the victories that you have. It's about, the grit and determination to keep moving forward no matter what's put in your face and what challenges you face, and just sort of celebrating how far you've come. And then to go to 2018, I thought I'd moved on a lot in my journey, and to, experience it from the point of view of being a graduate. Getting to do the media, speaking to corporate partners, speaking to schools and things like that. It was a real privilege to see people going through their journey and to reflect on my own and how far I'd come. But then I got to see the Games from such a different perspective. I met this young girl named Hannah. She has cerebral palsy, and she broke my heart when she said to me, "I can't play sport because I'm in a chair." So I took her to meet some of the team, I took her to some of the games, and I think when she turned around and she said to me, that people that actually tell you can do things, she said, when you hear that from someone who's struggled, when you hear that from someone who's going through the same experience as you, when you see people do that, she said, that's when you finally realise, I can do something. And she said the Games for her, and this I suppose was one of the moments that it all sort of made sense to me. The Games for her was about how people without a voice, people who suffer in silence, people with mental health disabilities, how they can shine, how they can be seen as people, how they can be seen as inspiration, how they can be seen to sort of challenge and start conversations. And that's when I realised the Games was just so much more than the athletes, and that unconquered spirit helps so many. It's not just about the veterans, and that had a huge impact on me and moving forward.
You make such a great point, Rachel, in that when you're struggling, not only mentally, but physically as well, it can feel so isolating and so lonely. And to be surrounded by a group of people that know exactly how you feel and have been through what you've been through must be so comforting for you. Now, so Peter, you've been Chief of the Defence Force. You've led our troops into battle. You've been at the coalface, I guess I'd call it, and you've seen firsthand the impact of that kind of service can have on individuals. Why is something like the Invictus Games so important for veterans?
Well, I had that lifelong career in the military, and apart from the hard times, which they're there, you're bursting with pride and wonder over the 40 years of your service. I remember the 2000 Olympics. Timor was just over, and here's the Olympics, and you're so proud of your nation and your people. I became Governor-General 2016, back at the Rio Games, Olympic Games, so proud. Seeing Curtis McGrath in the Paralympics, so proud. And I thought, that's taking some beating. And then in 2018, the Invictus Games occurred. I was still Governor-General, and something was emblematic of the whole Games, and it follows on from something Rachel said. that in the very early part of the Games, a road race was terminating in the Botanical Gardens in Sydney, and there was right near the finish. I'm there as GG, and I'm looking out over the finish, and it was one of those tricycle bikes that was racing, and a big Australian wearing his colours was coming in nip and tuck with another competitor from another nation, and our guy was just in front, and then the competitor had a problem and had to stop and was going to be overtaken. The Aussie, instead of going across the finish line, came straight back, grabbed hold of this fella, helped him along, pushed him along, and then the fella thought, well, maybe I'll come second, and the Aussie pushes him over the line first.
Oh.
And later on we all said, what did you do? He said, I've got other events. This is his only event. This may be his only Invictus Games. Well, to me, that was emblematic of Invictus Games and Invictus Australia. That's why we're there. Camaraderie, helping people, never giving in.
Isn't that incredible? And that's who our Defence Force personnel are, both past and present, just amazing. James, you had a really important role in overseeing the 2018 Invictus Games. What did you want, not just those that were there, but Australians who might have watched highlights on the news or had been able to get to an event, what kind of impact did you want these games to have on everyday Aussies?
Yeah, thanks, Erin. And I have to acknowledge our former chairman, General Peter Lay, who conceived of the Games, and the CEO, Patrick Kidd, who took us through them. I think the board wanted to bring Australians into the world of veterans and their families. So much of the courage that our veterans display is on mountains in Afghanistan or valleys in East Timor, so far away, so out of sight. The families who endure in silence around the kitchen table while their loved ones are serving Australia overseas. We wanted to make sure that we could bring Australians into that world for a week, and we did that. Millions of Australians saw what it's like to be a veteran, saw what it's like to be the family member of a veteran. We wanted to make sure that we could bring veterans who've had very different experiences together to share that. And, you know, it's quite extraordinary. One of the veterans that travelled to the 2018 Games was a Ukrainian quadruple amputee who came halfway around the world to compete, to share his experience. What connects his experience to the experience that Nicole and Rachel have had? It's that shared camaraderie, it's that code of honour that veterans sign up for, it's that notion of service above self, and that's what was fantastic to see playing out every day. And we knew there'd be inspirational moments, but I don't think we knew how many inspirational moments there'd be. To my mind, a few things stick in my head. There was a 4-year-old girl from Brisbane who came down to the Games with her families, and she had lost both of her legs and was facing a lifetime dealing with that. And her parents were facing a lifetime of tough decisions. Do we get the advanced prosthetic limbs early so that she can play with other kids, or when she's a teenager so she can do sport? Because we probably can't do both. And for her to just walk around and see people who look like her, doing amazing things, basking in, you know, the wonder of that week, the impact it will have on her, and for her family to know that they've got a network of people they can talk to throughout their lives, part of our Invictus community who will help them and be there for them, really extraordinary. And finally, I think the last moment for me that was amazing was presenting the Australian uniforms to the Australian team and just watching the pride in those competitors who'd worked so hard to get to that point where they could represent our country again, and some of the stories they shared about the lows in their life and then seeing them during that wonderful week in spring in Sydney, flourishing, thriving and succeeding. An amazing experience.
Oh, it's incredible, that little 4-year-old girl. How amazing is that? And that's what I love about this current movement, and what we're announcing today is that we're moving just out of the veteran space but into the community at the grassroots and family, and it's just absolutely amazing. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, James. Rachel and Nicole, thank you both so much for sharing your stories. I know that we haven't heard the last from you guys yet. We've still got plenty more to come. Now we have a special message from one of our ambassadors of the 2018 Sydney Games and ambassador of Invictus Australia, Hamish Blake.
G'day guys, Hamish Blake here. Very honoured to be an ambassador for Invictus Australia. Such a cool thing to be associated with. Absolutely loved my experience with the Invictus Games, and now to know that it's starting as Invictus Australia and all the amazing things I've got planned, I think is a great space to be a part of. it was an amazing way for everybody to come together to support veterans, to support first responders, to encourage and embrace the atmosphere of people in sport, in teams, using sport and the camaraderie that comes through it as a great way to move past their service and for people to give thanks for everything they've gone through. So awesome to be involved. Don't want to brag, but to celebrate this event, I have put in quite a bit of effort to make this all by myself. The slogan for Invictus Australia. I'm not saying, like, obviously the athletes, they put in more of an effort, but for me, that's a PB. Stoked to be involved.
Well, a big thank you to everyone for sharing their thoughts with us and their memories of what was such an incredible event back in 2018. Nicole, this is where you leave us, so thank you so very much for joining us for your time. Everyone else, stay put because we want to hear more from you guys a little bit later on. But for now, let's hear a little bit more from some of the incredible supporters of Invictus Australia.
Hello. Participating in sport, whether competitive or social, plays an important role in the lives of current and former serving Australian Defence Force personnel. It provides opportunities for our people to connect, to be challenged and to grow. It builds a sense of community long after people have left the ADF. We look forward to working closely with Invictus Australia as they continue to support and encourage participation in sport for all veterans and their families. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Meg Ward, NRL player, RAF firefighter, and now Invictus Australia ambassador. Congrats on the launch, guys. I'm so excited to see your awesome work unfold, and I love that you'll be helping veterans and their families. It's so important. Let's do this unconquered together.
Hi, I'm Stephen Moore, former Wallabies captain and Invictus Australia ambassador. Congratulations to everyone at Invictus Australia for the launch of this wonderful initiative. A great opportunity for veterans and their families to stay connected and active through the power of sport. Unconquered together.
So many incredible messages of support. It is such a wonderful community. Now we're back with a new guest joining our panel. Shortly we'll meet the Veteran Family Advocate Commissioner, sounds very important because it is, and Ambassador for the 2018 Sydney Invictus Games, that is Gwen Cherne, a wonderful woman. But before we meet Gwen, I'd like to come back. We've got Peter, James and Rachel here still on the panel. James, we talked to you about Sydney 2018, but we always like to look forward. We need to do that so we can continue to grow and evolve. What does today's announcement mean for the defence community?
We're looking forward to the next Invictus Games in The Hague in 2022. So Invictus Australia is funding, equipping, supporting that team, making sure that they can get there and do us proud once again. And we'll be looking to support the Games beyond that. But I think really this announcement catalyses what has been the legacy of a very successful Games. It brings Invictus to Australia. It's going to be catalysing to know that we have a permanent home for Invictus, the Invictus community, the Invictus spirit in Australia, not only for the Defence Force, but for our large community of more than 600,000 veterans and their families. The work we've been doing in the meantime now comes very much to the fore. So the programs we've been running to create sporting opportunities for veterans and their families, to connect them to sport, to work with major sporting codes. I mean, we've been running a program for the last couple of years called Battlefields to Footy Fields with the NRL, which gets veterans coming out of defence, particularly trained as referees, into refereeing of rugby league matches, because it turns out if you want to be a referee in the NRL, it helps to have unarmed and armed combat skills. Those sorts of programs weren't possible before this organisation started, and we're doing more of that in a whole range of sports right across the country.
Now, be honest, this is just a ploy by the NRL to stop the likes of Gus Gould being critical of referees, because once he knows they're veterans, he's not going to say a word. Correct, right?
Knowing you're up against someone who's served in Afghanistan before they made that controversial decision, that's pretty intimidating. It has exactly the right effect.
It's absolutely brilliant. There really are so many similarities in the different roles. So what a wonderful, wonderful program. Now, Rachel, you've been working with Veteran Sport Australia to support veteran communities throughout northern New South Wales over the past few years. Tell us about how this works to make an impact right at the coalface.
I have a really unique opportunity with the work that I do. This program's about so much more than just the Invictus Games. I work with veterans and their families on the ground and look at how I can support them with their physical health and wellbeing through sport, whether that be through getting individual veterans back into social connection to find that camaraderie and support that they want, whether it's working with the families, whether it's working with sporting bodies, external support organisations, national and local level government. I work with quite a lot of people to help and support the local veteran community. It is about actually looking at veterans and their families.
Rachel, just quickly, I want to know your story in a nutshell, if you can. What happened to you and why are you so passionate about helping others?
Well, I'm a veteran myself. I served in the Air Force and saw some active service in Afghanistan. As a result of that, in 2010, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and chronic depressive disorder. And then I had quite a significant journey through mental health. I tried to take my life on 3 separate occasions. I was on 30 tablets a day just to control my moods, my anxiety. I lost my whole support network, except for my daughter, who became my sole carer at 8 years old. We went through homelessness and finding our way back. I ended up getting severe agoraphobia and not being able to leave the house. So it was quite a journey back, and the Invictus Games and sport gave me that family. It gave me what I'd been missing and what I didn't realise I'd been missing, which was that connection with the community that understood what I was going through, that was just there, and it gave me a drive and a purpose again. It gave me something to do. It showed me that, underneath all these different labels that you get of PTSD, mental health, injury, you can still be anything. You can still achieve what you want. And I mean, if I hadn't have sort of got back into sport, I wouldn't have found this role, and I wouldn't be able to help other veterans on the ground and their families reconnect socially through such an amazing avenue such as sport.
Rachel, if you're not a serving member or the family of one, I think it's really hard to understand what that is like. Can you give us a couple of examples of real people that you're coming into contact with on the ground?
Oh, definitely. I work with, veterans that are serving, ex-serving, transitioning, and their families. So it's quite a mix of people. So it can be, for example, one of the guys I worked with, he's 70 years old, wanted to be involved in surf lifesaving, but obviously due to physical injury, couldn't actually go out there and be a part of the community. So we got him involved in volunteering for that group. So he now, does grant writing and is part of the board and is part of that community in such an active and meaningful way. I've worked with some individuals who just can't take that first step and to get into sport, or don't know what that looks like for them. So it might be, going, picking them up, taking them to that event a couple of times, maybe not even making it into the sporting event for the first time. I've had an experience with a veteran who I did that with, and he's now out there and he has found his sport, he's found his passion, he tries everything that comes along, and he's training to actually instruct other people now through the sport that he loves, which is, from someone who was referred to us as struggling, going through the mental health system, getting in real trouble with the police, to see this turnaround through sport and what that's done to his family. There's other examples where we've had family days and, families have come out, and I had a wife come up to me one day and say, this is the first time we've been able to be out as a family and enjoy ourselves, thank you so much. And there's people that want to be involved in sport in such, a competitive way. So it's about finding those pathways for them to go through that, finding ways that they can just run around with their kids on the soccer field. If a veteran gets transitioned to another area, it's about linking them in with sports that are already there and helping them through that process. There's just so many ways we interact with veterans on the ground.
You are an incredible, incredible human being, and I can only imagine your daughter is as well. Thank you so much for using your struggle to help others. It's an incredible example of how you can overcome immense pain and heartache. So thank you so much. Here is a short message from the Honourable Andrew Gee, the Minister for Veterans Affairs and the Minister for Defence Personnel.
G'day, I'm Andrew G, the Minister for Veterans Affairs and Defence Personnel, and I'm honoured to join Invictus Australia for this momentous announcement. What a wonderful achievement for our nation to now officially be part of this renowned international sporting movement. Aussies have embraced and supported our competitors in all 4 Invictus Games, perhaps no more so than the Sydney 2018 Games, and Sydney was about so much more than a medal tally. We witnessed outstanding displays of sportsmanship, determination, camaraderie and inspiration by those with their own stories of recovery, grit and resolve. We all backed our sporting veterans who embodied the fighting spirit of those injured physically or mentally while serving our country. And while there were so many outstanding personal achievements, for me, the actions of the Australian wheelchair rugby team epitomised Invictus. Our players put aside trans-Tasman sporting rivalry, no easy thing to do, to pass the ball to an opponent who was new to the game and visibly exhausted, before making sure he got across that goal line to score. It was our enduring Anzac spirit on display for the world to witness. And in the 3 years since the Sydney Games, Veteran Sport Australia has worked tirelessly to further inspire and unite veterans through the power of Aussie sport. As we know, Invictus means unconquered. The name embodies the fighting spirit of our servicemen and women, their sacrifice, commitment and contribution to our services and indeed our country. You have all well and truly earned the Invictus Australia title. Sport is the lifeblood of our nation, and Invictus is one of the iconic sporting organisations at its beating heart. To our aspiring Invictus competitors, we admire your stamina and courage, your passion and resolve, and share in the sheer joy that comes with being part of a movement that brings out the best in everyone. Admiration, respect, and above all, friendship and mateship. Invictus is all about the healing power of sport. So congratulations, Invictus Australia, on your new game plan and your support of our Aussie champions.
Oh, thank you very much. It's so wonderful to have such strong support. And look, politicians, the government can get a bad rap sometimes. And I'm not just defending them because of Dad, obviously, but we do need government. They do wonderful things when it comes to funding. That's a huge part of this. We need Rachels in every corner of this country going out there and helping veterans. So Peter Cosgrove, what do we need to do to get the government to support this?
Well, Invictus is such an inspiring term. It evokes, and did evoke in 2018, the enthusiasm of Australia. And now Invictus Australia, which carries on that legacy and torch, shows the government and the whole community groups of sporting entities all around Australia, different sports around the whole of the Commonwealth, where they come together to help service folk who have retired, and some maybe who are in the last periods of their service, to integrate with the community in that wonderful Australian way. This is so positive. It's almost a no-brainer for government to say, this is so beneficial, we will support this. Not just the federal government, state governments and local governments can all pitch in and use Invictus Australia to promote wellness amongst this precious group of the community, veterans.
Absolutely, and it's not just the individuals, it's their entire families, their support networks, their friends, our communities. Helping veterans helps everyone.
And the other thing is, of course, the veterans themselves will bring enormous skills, energy, commitment and love to the sport in which they're involved.
100% well said. Okay, it's now time to meet Gwen Cherne. Gwen, welcome. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thanks, Erin. Lovely to be here.
Now, we've seen in the past month updated stats that have come to light around veteran suicide. It's been a massive talking point, and deservedly so, particularly those that are medically discharged from a younger generation. First of all, what is your experience with this?
Well, personally, my husband died in 2017 by suicide while he was serving, and I have a 22-year-old stepson who is serving in 3 RAR in the Army. So very important issue for me. These statistics are individuals that are connected to families who they've left behind. And our next generation of those people are 2 to 3 times more likely to die by suicide if they're children of those veterans. So we have an enormous duty to ensure that this community as a whole heals. And if this can be a piece of that, then it's important we invest in it.
When we hear about someone who's lost their life in service, in the active duty overseas, there's this incredible rallying of support. Is it the same when a service member takes their life?
I don't think it was. Previously, I think it was, even in Australia, around the world, it was covered up. You know, when my husband first died, I was getting messages over and over and over again, because I came out publicly and talked about it, of people who were 8 and they had said their father died of cancer or whatnot. And now people are coming out and talking about it, and our community is really rallying around those families and that community affected by that suicide.
Talking about it saves lives, doesn't it?
100%. It decreases the stigma. It lets you know that people like me have had suicidal ideation, that, you know, you can be successful and involved in the world and healed and recovered, or not, and yet you can all be affected by it.
So Gwen, what we are announcing today, how will that help members of the veteran community?
Invictus Australia isn't just about the veteran, it's about the family and the veteran. I always say it's veterans and families who've served, because while we're at home or and our veteran is deployed or on trainings, we're serving as well. You know, as a mother of a serving member, I'm still serving. I am, you know, there's a duty and an honor that I hold up and ensure that the fabric of the Australian society is not frayed because of the impact of defence service, which does affect us. It is hard to have our families away, to watch them suffer, to watch them put themselves in harm's way or be injured or ill. And so when this community comes around something like Invictus Australia, it reaches families, it inspires families, it allows our former serving veteran to put on that uniform again, or just be inspired by something else, to look at what the possibility is for their life. It doesn't have to reduce their life, it can actually expand it, and therefore the families. I mean, Katrina Robinson, who's doing archery, inspires me all the time, because her husband Gary was doing it, and now she's out there, you know, following her own path, following her own sporting inspiration, and being a light to the rest of us.
I think one of the great parts of this is that often veterans, their whole life has been dedicated to the service of others, so helping themselves is not always a priority. But if they can do something for their children, or their children are the reason that they go to a community day that's put on by Invictus Australia, that helps everyone. It gives them a reason.
And it also helps them reconnect. Right? Like when I'm kayaking with my kids, I'm connecting. I'm not on social media, I'm not on my computer, I'm not working, I'm reconnecting with my kids, I'm teaching them something. And those are some of the best memories I have with my dad, is going down to the batting cages, or having him teach me tennis, or take me out on the slopes when it was dark. You know, those are the memories that stick with me.
Gwen, thank you so very much for sharing your story and being so open and raw. I have no doubt at all that it will help so many people. James, thank you for all the work you do in this space. And Peter, for your ongoing support, just incredible. Rachel as well, your story is so inspiring to every single person watching right now. Thank you. Now, it's been an absolute privilege to host this for you today. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you get involved if you can, because this organisation will not just help veterans, but every single Australian should be invested in the health and the happiness of our veteran community. Okay, now I'd like to leave the closing statements to, in fact, you mentioned Katrina a little bit earlier, to Katrina and Gary Robinson. Thank you so much.
As a competitor at each of the Invictus Games, and having my family by my side the whole time, I experienced firsthand the difference sport and mateship make. Invictus has literally saved my life. First at the games, and now at each day as I participate in my local archery club, my wife, kids and now grandkids.
Invictus brought Gary back to us. It has the ability to heal whole families, not just individual veterans. While the games are a wonderful moment in time, it's the ongoing community sport, staying active and connected, that strengthens our health and family unit and make an enormous impact.
Invictus Australia has an opportunity for this impact to continue. So we're urging government and corporate sector everywhere in Australia to get behind this fantastic organisation.
Sport is a powerful vehicle for rehabilitation and reintegration, but importantly, can proactively support the general well-being of the defence community. So jump on the website to see how you can help support Invictus Australia. Unconquered together.
Out of the night that covers me.
Black as a pit from pole to pole.
I thank where the gods may be.
For my unconquerable soul.
In the fell clutch of circumstance.
I'm not quite allowed.
Under the bludgeonings of chance.
My head is bloody, but I'm bowed.
Beyond this place of wrath and tears
looms but the horror of the shade.
And yet, the menace of the years.
Find and shall find me, unafraid.
It matters not how straight the gate.
How charged with punishments, the scroll.
I am the master of my fate!
I am the captain of my soul.
I am the captain of my soul.